Senorita woke up to silence so heavy it felt alive. The kind of silence that breathes against your neck and watches you before you even open your eyes. Her head throbbed. A faint scent of expensive cologne lingered in the air. Smoky, dangerous, intoxicating. She blinked, squinting at the unfamiliar room. Black marble walls, dim golden lights, and a massive window revealing Seoul's skyline glowing beneath the rain. Everything looked too perfect, too expensive, too wrong. Then she realized she wasn't alone. A man sat across the room, half in shadow, half bathed in the silver light spilling through the glass. He was still as a statue, dressed in black silk, one hand resting lazily on the armrest, the other holding a glass of whiskey. Tattoos crawled up his neck like dark secrets that refused to sleep. His eyes, cold, unreadable, lifted slowly toward her. Taejin. The name slammed into her memory like a curse. The same man she had seen last night, the one everyone whispered about at the restaurant. The one she had accidentally spilled red wine on before everything went black. Senorita sat up fast, clutching the sheet to her chest. "Where am I?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "In my house." "Why?" Her voice cracked, but she lifted her chin, pretending not to be afraid. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze traveling over her face like he was memorizing every reaction. "You talk too much for someone who should be dead." The words hit like ice water. Her throat went dry. "Dead." Taejin placed his glass down and stood, moving toward her with the kind of quiet that makes your heart forget how to beat. "You spilled wine on me," he said softly, stopping just short of the bed. "In front of my men. In front of my rivals. No one disrespects me like that." I didn't mean to," she stammered. He smiled, and it wasn't kind. "They all say that before they beg." Senorita forced herself to breathe. Her pulse was a drum inside her ears, but she refused to let him see fear. "So what now? You going to kill me over wine?" Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. He tilted his head slightly. "Kill you?" he murmured. "No, that would be too easy." He took a step closer, and she caught the scent of him again. Dark cedar and danger. "I made you a promise last night. You remember?" She searched his face, confused. "I told you," he said, his voice dropping low. "If you survive one night in my bed, I'll let you go." The room spun. Her breath caught in her throat. "What kind of sick game is this?" Taejin didn't answer. He just looked at her, the kind of look that made her want to hide and fight at the same time. "You're a monster," she whispered. He smiled again, faintly. "I've been called worse." He turned away, walking toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass like tears the sky refused to hold. "It's 2 a.m., he said quietly. "Survive until sunrise, senorita. Then you're free." Her name sounded strange in his mouth. Too intimate, too dangerous. When he left the room, she finally exhaled. Her hands were shaking. She scanned the penthouse quickly. There were no guards inside, no visible doors except one that led to what looked like a bathroom. The walls were too smooth to climb, the windows too high to break. Whoever Taejin was, he'd built this place like a cage wrapped in luxury. Senorita swung her legs off the bed. Her bare feet touched cold marble. "Okay," she muttered under her breath. "You've handled worse." But deep down, she wasn't sure she had. Hours crawled by. Every sound, the whisper of rain, the soft hum of the city, made her flinch. She tried to stay awake, tried to think of a plan, but her body was exhausted. At some point, she dozed off against the headboard. When she woke again, the room wasn't empty anymore. Taejin stood at the window, watching the city like a king who owned its every secret. He hadn't changed clothes. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met hers in the glass reflection. "You're braver than I thought," he said softly. She swallowed. "You make that sound like a bad thing." "It might be," he replied. "Bravery gets people killed around me." Senorita pushed herself up, arms crossed. "Maybe you just scare cowards." For a heartbeat, silence stretched. Then Taejin laughed. Low, dangerous, unexpected. It sent shivers down her spine, but not from fear this time. "You're different," he said finally, turning to face her. "Most people tremble when I look at them. You talk back. Maybe you're not that scary," she shot back. He smiled again. but this time there was something almost human in it. You should sleep, he said. You still have 3 hours left. Sleep? In a psycho's bed. He looked at her quietly for a moment. Fine, then stay awake. But don't touch anything you'll regret. He walked past her toward the door. She expected him to leave, but instead, he stopped beside the bed. So close she could feel the heat from his body. I keep my word, he murmured. If you're still alive by sunrise, you walk free. And if I'm not? She asked. He leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. Then you'll belong to me forever. Her heart stopped, but when she met his gaze, something wild flashed between them. Fear? Yes, but also something she couldn't name. When Tae-jin left the room, the door locked with a soft click. Señorita sat frozen, staring at the rain-soaked skyline. She didn't know what the night would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't dying here. Not in his bed. Not in his cage. She would survive him, even if it killed her. The rain didn't stop. It drummed against the glass walls of the penthouse like a heartbeat that refused to rest. The city outside shimmered in pools of light, but inside, everything felt suspended. Half dream, half trap. Señorita hadn't moved from the bed. Her body was awake, but her mind was wandering through every possible escape. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Each minute sounded louder than the last. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the door's shadow shift. Someone was standing there. Tae-jin entered quietly, his presence filling the room before his voice did. He wasn't carrying a weapon this time, just a tray of food, rice, soup, and tea that steamed gently in the dim light. I thought mafias don't serve dinner, she muttered. He set the tray down on the table near the bed. It's breakfast. You've been asleep for hours. Señorita blinked. So, it's morning? Not yet. His tone carried that faint amusement again. You still have 2 hours. Her heart sank. She'd hoped the night had already ended, that she could walk out into the rain and never look back. Instead, she was still caught inside the longest night of her life. Tae-jin took the chair across from her, unhurried. Eat. I'm not hungry. Eat, he repeated, voice low but steady. It wasn't a threat this time. It almost sounded like concern, though she refused to believe it. She picked up the spoon, hands trembling slightly, and took a small bite. He watched her without blinking. What? She snapped. Afraid I'll poison myself before you do? He smirked. You don't seem the type to give up that easily. I'm not. She met his gaze head-on. But I'm also not your toy. Something flickered behind his eyes. Then what are you, señorita? A woman who made a mistake and doesn't plan on dying for it. Tae-jin leaned back, studying her like a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. You're interesting. That's your word for people you don't kill? That's my word for people I can't predict. She looked away, but her pulse betrayed her. His attention was suffocating and magnetic all at once. Every time his eyes softened, even for a second, something inside her wavered between fear and curiosity. He rose from the chair, walking to the piano in the corner of the room. Until that moment, she hadn't noticed it. Black lacquer, polished to perfection. The only object that seemed truly personal among the cold luxury. Without a word, he sat and began to play. Soft notes drifted through the air. Haunting, precise, full of sadness she couldn't explain. The sound didn't belong to a man who killed for power. It belonged to someone who'd lost something he could never name. Señorita forgot to breathe. The melody wrapped around her like mist. When he stopped, the silence returned heavier than before. Who taught you to play? She asked quietly. My mother, he said. Before my father taught me how to shoot. She swallowed. That explains a lot. He chuckled under his breath, a sound too rare for the room they shared. You have a sharp tongue. Better than shaking. He turned his chair slightly toward her. Why aren't you terrified of me anymore? I am, she admitted. I just decided not to show it. That answer landed between them like a truth neither expected. Tae-jin looked at her for a long time, then reached into his pocket and slid something across the table. A small silver key. What's that for? She asked. The door. He stood. You can leave. Señorita blinked, confused. You said. I said if you survived the night, you'd be free. He checked his watch. It's close enough to sunrise. Her heart raced. You're letting me go? Just like that. He shrugged. You didn't cry, you didn't beg. I don't keep what I can't break. The words should have stung. But somehow they didn't. They sounded more like a confession than cruelty. She took the key slowly, fingers brushing his. The contact was brief, but it burned. Why me? She whispered. Tae-jin looked toward the window again, his reflection merging with the city's glow. Because you looked at me like I was human. No one does that anymore. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain softened. The air felt fragile. Senorita stood, clutching the key, her mind torn between escape and the strange pull in her chest. Goodbye, Tae-jin. He nodded once, as if dismissing her, but his jaw tightened. Don't look back. She turned and walked toward the hallway. Every step felt unreal. The door opened with a soft click. The key had worked. Freedom waited beyond. But when she stepped into the corridor, she paused. The air outside was colder, the silence lonelier. She didn't look back, but she felt his gaze follow her until the elevator doors closed. Down in the lobby, the city noise hit her like sunlight after darkness. She stepped out into the wet morning, hair damp, heart still pounding. The rain had eased into a mist that kissed her skin. She was alive. She'd survived the night. Yet as she walked away from the building, her chest ached in a way she didn't understand. Something inside her whispered that the story wasn't over, that surviving Tae-jin might have only been the beginning. Above her, high in the penthouse window, Tae-jin watched her disappear into the gray dawn. He didn't move, didn't speak. The piano stood silent behind him, its final note still echoing in his head. Senorita, he murmured to the glass, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. We'll see how long freedom tastes sweet. The first light of day broke over Seoul, cold and golden. The night had ended, but their bond had only just begun. Tae-jin didn't sleep after she left. The penthouse still carried the faint scent of her perfume, a whisper of jasmine that clung to the silk sheets, the hallway, his memory. He told himself it was nothing, that she had been just another lesson to prove he was in control. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her walking away under the gray dawn, head high, defiant. He hated the way her name felt inside his mind. He hated even more that it made him calm. For the first time in years, Tae-jin canceled a meeting. His men waited downstairs, uneasy. Rumors had already begun to spread through the ranks, that their boss had kept a woman overnight and let her walk out alive. No one could remember him sparing anyone before. He ignored them all. From the wide glass window, he watched the city wake up. The neon signs flickered off one by one, and the streets filled with taxis and umbrellas. Somewhere out there, she was probably blending back into ordinary life, like the night had been a nightmare she'd chosen to forget. Except he couldn't. Senorita tried to pretend the same thing. Her small apartment felt safer than it had in weeks, but the silence had changed. Every sound now made her think of that penthouse, of the rain, the piano, and the way his eyes softened when she called him out. She told herself she hated him. Yet when she passed a shop window and saw her reflection, she half expected to see his shadow behind her. At the restaurant, her coworkers stared when a black car parked across the street. Its windows were tinted, impossible to see through. You okay, Sen? Her friend Nari whispered. Fine, she lied, forcing a smile. But her heart was already racing. She didn't need to look twice to know whose car that was. The man who'd let her go was watching her again. For the next few days, the pattern repeated. Wherever Senorita went, that car appeared. Parked near the bus stop, waiting by the corner store, idling outside her apartment building. It never followed her home directly, but it never stayed far. Once, when she turned the key to her door, she found a small package waiting on the floor. Inside was a white scarf, silk, soft, expensive, and a note written in flawless handwriting. You left in the rain. Consider this a replacement. T. She threw the note away, but she kept the scarf. Meanwhile, inside his office, Tae-jin's lieutenants whispered among themselves. Boss hasn't been the same, one murmured. He's distracted, another said. Over a waitress? Be quiet before he hears you. Tae-jin did hear them. He simply didn't care. Every night, he found himself at the piano again. Every melody turned into her name. His assistant brought him reports about rival gangs, about shipments and meetings, but his mind drifted back to her words. Maybe you're not that scary. No one had ever dared say that to him. On the fifth night, he made a decision. Find out everything about Señorita. He told his right-hand man, Minsik. Everything, sir? Where she works, where she sleeps, who she talks to. No harm. His voice lowered. Just eyes. Señorita felt those eyes days later when she walked through the crowded market. She spotted a man pretending to read a newspaper by the fruit stand, another sitting in a cafe with no drink in front of him. She knew surveillance when she saw it. That evening, she marched straight into the shadows where the car waited and banged on the window. Tell your boss to stop stalking me. The glass rolled down slowly. Taejin was inside. Her voice caught in her throat. You're here. He gestured toward the passenger door. Get in. No, you're standing in the rain again. His tone was mild, but his eyes carried the same gravity she remembered. Don't make me ask twice. Against her better judgment, she slid into the seat. The car smelled of leather and cold air. The city lights blurred past as they drove. Why are you following me? She demanded. I wasn't following, he said. I was making sure you were safe. Safe? From what bad customers? Or from you? He looked at her then, not with anger but something quieter, almost regretful. You don't understand how many people saw you that night. My enemies think you matter to me. Do I? The question slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't answer right away. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think. And now you're in danger because of me. Señorita sank back into the seat, the weight of his words settling in. So you're saying I'm stuck with you again? I'm saying I can protect you, he corrected softly. Let me. They stopped outside a quiet building overlooking the Han River. It wasn't his penthouse this time, smaller, warmer, less like a cage. Taejin led her inside, where soft lights glowed against wood floors. Stay here for a while. I'll make sure you're safe. She folded her arms. And what do I owe you this time? Nothing. His gaze lingered on her face. You already paid. You survived me. Something inside her cracked at the honesty in his voice. She nodded slowly, stepping inside. He left her with food, clothes, and silence. But even when he closed the door behind him, she could still feel him everywhere. The air, the walls, the ache in her chest that she didn't want to name. Days turned into weeks. Señorita learned that Taejin's world was built on both loyalty and fear. His men treated him like a god. Yet when he was with her, the hardness in his face faded. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they shared quiet meals where neither spoke, yet everything was said through glances. He never touched her, never crossed the invisible line between them, but the space they shared pulsed with unspoken electricity. One night, she found him asleep on the couch, exhausted from a fight with his rivals. The sight of him, still unguarded, made her heart twist. She placed a blanket over him and whispered, "You're not as heartless as you want people to think." He stirred slightly but didn't wake. Outside, the city kept spinning with its noise and violence. Inside, two people who should have been enemies began to move around each other like stars caught in the same orbit. Dangerous, beautiful, doomed to collide. And when dawn finally touched the river, Taejin woke to find the blanket around his shoulders and a single white flower left on the table. He smiled faintly. "Señorita," he murmured, "you're becoming my weakness." The morning light slipped through the tall glass panes, pale and cold. Señorita woke to the low hum of the city below, the smell of rain still lingering in the air. For a moment she forgot where she was, until she saw the faint reflection of Taejin moving across the room. He was by the window, jacket off, shirt rolled at the sleeves, his back turned as he spoke quietly into his phone. Every motion was sharp, deliberate. Power looked natural on him. Yet there was a weight in the way his shoulders curved forward. He ended the call without a goodbye. "You're awake," he said without turning. It wasn't a question. He already knew. "I heard you pacing," she replied. Her voice was still rough with sleep, and she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "You do that when something's wrong." Taejin finally looked over, one brow slightly raised. "You notice too much. Occupational habit." she said lightly, comes with being alive around you. He almost smiled, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He poured himself a drink, black coffee, no sugar, and slid another cup across the table toward her. The gesture was small, but it felt like an apology wrapped in silence. She took it. They drank in quiet, the air thick with things neither dared to say. Señorita set her cup down and studied him. Last night he had looked like a storm about to break. Now he looked tired. What happened on that call? She asked. Business, he answered. Bad business. Always. She tilted her head. You could try trusting me a little. Tae-jin met her gaze, and for the first time she saw something flicker, hesitation. He had spent years hiding behind walls built from blood and loyalty. But this woman kept finding cracks. I don't trust anyone, he said. Not even myself. Maybe that's why you can't sleep, she whispered. He looked away, jaw tightening. She'd hit too close. Rain began again, soft at first, then heavier. The penthouse lights dimmed against the gray outside. Señorita moved to the window, tracing circles on the glass. Back home, she murmured. We say rain means the skies washing away yesterday's lies. He turned to her. Does it work? Only if you let it. For a long time he said nothing. Then he walked closer until his reflection overlapped with hers. They stood side by side, city lights blinking beneath them like dying stars. Last night, he began slowly, when you said loneliness was worse than fear, you were right. She turned to him, surprised. Tae-jin. He stopped her with a look. I spent half my life fighting to be feared. It made me untouchable. But it also made me empty. Something inside her softened. She wanted to reach out, but she knew touch could break whatever fragile honesty this was. Then stop, she said. Stop pretending you don't feel. You're human, not a myth. His eyes lingered on her face, the warmth of her skin against the silver light, the quiet defiance that drew him in despite every warning in his head. He exhaled slowly. I don't know if I remember how. Then learn, she said. I'll remind you. A knock came at the door, sharp, urgent. Tae-jin stiffened. Stay here, he ordered. He crossed the room in long strides. When he opened the door, one of his men bowed quickly and whispered something in Korean. Tae-jin's expression darkened. Whatever peace had existed dissolved in an instant. Pack your things, he said over his shoulder. We're leaving. Señorita blinked. What? Why? Where? Someone found out you're here. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. Who? He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and a small black case from the table. His calm had returned, but it was the kind that comes before chaos. Tae-jin, talk to me. You wanted to be part of my world, he said, eyes locked on hers. Now you are. He moved to the concealed elevator, motioning for her to follow. For a moment she didn't. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, half defiance, half fear. Then she stepped forward. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing them into a mirror of steel and silence. He pressed a code and the cabin began to descend. Their eyes met in the reflection. His unreadable. Hers, burning with 100 questions. Where are we going? She asked quietly. To somewhere no one can find you, he said. Then softer. Not even me if it comes to that. The words chilled her. She looked at him, realizing that beneath his ruthlessness was a man terrified of losing what little good remained in him. And somehow she had become that peace. When the doors opened, the hallway beyond smelled of rain and gunmetal. Outside, black cars waited with engines humming. Tae-jin guided her forward, his hand hovering near hers but never touching. The city roared around them, but between them there was only that heavy, electric silence. As they stepped into the car, thunder rolled across the skyline. Señorita glanced at him, eyes steady. You keep running, Tae-jin. What happens when you finally stop? He didn't look at her. When I stop, he said quietly, it's because there's nothing left to lose. The car pulled away, its reflection vanishing into the wet streets. Above, the rain kept falling, washing, erasing, beginning again. And somewhere inside the storm, two hearts that were never meant to meet kept moving toward a truth neither could escape. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It fell in thin silver sheets across the city, washing neon lights into rivers of color. Inside the black car, silence pressed down on everything. Senorita sat beside Taejin, watching the water slide across the window like veins of glass. He hadn't spoken since they left the penthouse. His jaw was clenched, eyes fixed on the road ahead, one hand resting on the gun holster at his side. Every now and then, the faint vibration of his phone buzzed against the console, but he ignored it. Senorita's heart pounded with questions she couldn't ask. Who found out? Why did we have to run? But more than anything, she wondered why the man beside her, the one who had promised her freedom if she survived the night, now seemed desperate to protect her. After almost an hour, Taejin finally spoke. We'll reach the safe house in 30 minutes. You'll stay there until I finish cleaning this up. His tone was low and steady, the kind that didn't invite discussion. But Senorita had never been good at staying quiet. And what if I don't want to stay hidden? She asked. He glanced at her, eyes narrowing. Then I'll make you. She let out a bitter laugh. You can't keep locking me away every time your world gets messy. Taejin looked away, but his fingers tightened slightly around the gun. You don't understand how dangerous this is. Then make me understand, she snapped. Stop treating me like some fragile thing that can't handle truth. The car hit a bump, jolting them both. His men in the front exchanged nervous glances through the rearview mirror. Taejin's silence felt heavier than the storm outside. Finally, he said, Someone put a price on your head. Senorita froze. What? He turned to her fully now, eyes dark and sharp. You became leverage, Senorita. They know you were in my penthouse. They think you're important to me. She stared at him, voice trembling. Am I? His silence was louder than any answer. The car swerved onto a narrow road leading out of the city, the lights fading behind them. For a moment, everything felt suspended between fear and something unspoken. Senorita's throat ached. So I'm just bait now? No, he said firmly. You're the reason I'm still trying to be human. Her heart stilled. Taejin rarely said things that raw, that honest. She didn't know whether to be afraid or to feel seen for the first time. When the car finally stopped, they were in front of a secluded cabin surrounded by pine trees and mist. It looked nothing like the luxury she'd seen before. Just quiet, raw earth and rain. He opened the door for her but didn't move closer. You'll stay here until I call. She frowned. And if I say no? Then I'll tie you to the chair until you do, he said, voice calm but eyes pleading. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You really have control issues. And you really don't know when to stop talking, he replied, almost fondly. Inside, the cabin was warm, the fire already burning, as if someone had been expecting them. Taejin's men carried in bags and left quietly, shutting the door behind them. The rain softened into a whisper against the roof. Senorita sat on the couch, hugging her knees, while Taejin stood near the window, watching shadows move through the forest. You should eat, he said after a while. She didn't move. You should sit. He turned, surprised. Why? Because you look like you haven't done that in years. Something in her tone made him obey. He sat across from her, the firelight flickering across his face, softening the edges that the world had carved into him. Why are you helping me? She asked finally. You could have let me go. He stared at the flames. I told myself I didn't care, but every time I tried to walk away, I saw your face. And I hated that it made me stop. She swallowed hard, unsure whether to be flattered or terrified. That sounds a lot like caring. It's not, he said quickly, but his voice lacked conviction. It's survival. You remind me what it's like to feel something. The words sank into her like a slow ache. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of fire and the rain outside. Then Senorita said softly, You know what's funny? You're the most dangerous man I've ever met. But when I look at you right now, you just look lost. Taejin's eyes lifted to hers, sharp yet wounded. Maybe I am. Their gazes held. The firelight danced between them, a fragile, golden thread tying two broken souls together. Then, somewhere outside, a branch cracked. Taejin stood instantly, gun drawn. The warmth vanished, replaced by tension. He motioned for her to stay still. But Senorita wasn't good at following orders. She crept toward the window, peeking through the curtain. In the darkness beyond the rain, she saw movement, 3 figures slipping through the trees. "Tae-jin," she whispered, "we're not alone." He cursed under his breath, then turned to her, voice low but urgent. "Get behind me." The door rattled. 1 gunshot exploded outside. Tae-jin moved fast, grabbing her hand, pulling her behind the couch. "Stay down," he ordered. The next few seconds blurred. Boots on the porch, shouts in Korean, glass shattering as bullets ripped through the windows. Senorita's pulse thundered in her ears. Tae-jin fired back, each shot precise, cold, ruthless. Then silence. Only the rain remained. He stood breathing hard, eyes scanning the doorway. When he was sure it was clear, he turned back to her. She was trembling but alive. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I told you my world was dangerous." She looked up, voice barely a whisper. "And I told you I'm not afraid of you." For a moment he just stared at her, the woman who should have run, but didn't. The one who stood beside his darkness instead of fleeing from it. Something inside him cracked. He pulled her into his arms, not gently but like a man trying to hold on to something real for the first time in years. The storm outside roared on, but inside that small cabin, it was the sound of 2 hearts learning to beat in the same rhythm. Dangerous, fragile, and real.
Hello, besties. The Mafia's fight for love and survival has just begun. Stay tuned for episode 2. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.